Never miss an episode of the Final Furlong podcast. Subscribe now on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And now, here's your host, Emmet Kennedy.
Great to have you with us for our next installment of Jumpers to Follow with the main man, Paul Ferguson of Weatherby's Jumpers to Follow, which is available now. weatherbyshop.co.uk, weatherbyshop.ie, and there's some other ones as well. But the reason you want to go to the Weatherby shop is because if you use our exclusive bonus code, you can get yourself a £3 discount on your purchase right now. £3 off using your promo code FFJTF2526. £3 off the essential guide for the National Hunt season from Paul Ferguson. Horses to follow, pedigree updates, stats, trends, insight from trainers, from jockeys. It is first class stuff, and the sales have been going really well, Paul.
Yeah, they have, yeah, and thanks to your listenership, those who availed themselves of the discount code from the first podcast that was on excelled expectations. So thank you, anyone listening who bought a copy.
Well done. You've got yourself a fantastic product and you've got yourself a great guide to the season. The man himself is going to talk you through some of the Novice Hurdlers to watch out for. You've got a list of 10 for us to be excited about, Paul. The first horse we're going to talk about is one for a man who's going to have his eye on the prize of being champion trainer, Dan Skelton. We're going to talk about Bossman Jack.
Yeah, and I probably could have picked. There's a whole host of exciting Novice Hurdlers in Dan's yard this season. He's a bit inundated in that division, but I've gone for Bossman Jack. He created a really good impression when he won on his sole start at Wincanton in January, ridden patiently out the back. And if you go back and watch the video and see how much ground he actually made up from turning into hitting the front, it was pretty impressive indeed. And he's got a pedigree that regular listeners or readers of my work will know that I'm probably a fan of. Him being a half-brother to Gidley Park, whose horse I've spoke about fondly since his bumper days. Looks of a similar ilk in terms of physique. I was slightly surprised that we didn't see him again afterwards. He was actually qualified for the valuable Goffs bumper at Newbury, which Skelton actually won anyway, with Cadastral being another one for the list of Novice Hurdlers. But as of when I was putting the book together, Harry actually said that he met with a slight setback, Bossman Jack, afterwards, so he wasn't risked again. But no issue with him now, and he's back in and ready to go over hurdles. I say, given that pedigree, I think you'd expect him to start over 2 miles, but you'll probably get 2.5 in time.
Very early days for that form yet. The Nichols horse ran once and was well beaten, but the third horse for the Signy Yard under Gavin Sheehan, he's come out and run again and won subsequently.
Yeah, he won a small race, market racing I think it was, and the horse who finished, there's a mare who finished in 6th, trained by Dr. Newland and Jamie Insole. She came out Celestial Star. She'd beaten a fairway. She won twice in bumpers at Hereford and Hexham, and won during the summer in a maiden hurdle. So, albeit she's only rated 112 after a couple of runs over hurdles, but it does give a bit of context to the form. She was well beaten, and Bossman Jack was well on top of the line, and I would expect him to develop into a nice horse going forward. Say another one I'd touch on briefly from the Skelton Yard would be My Daddy Paddy. I think he's been doing the rounds of it and popular on horse to follow lists. I know Harry was particularly bullish about him, actually more bullish than he usually is when he interviewed him for the book. So he won a bumper at Huntingdon on debut. Pretty impressively. I say visually he was quite striking, and I think they hold him in quite high regard at the Skeltons. 2
horses from the Skelton Yard to mention, but one for the top 10 list, Bossman Jack.
I thought he'd probably a name that hasn't cropped up on as many lists, so both of those horses feature among the leading prospects in the book itself. But Bossman Jack, having only had the one run a little bit earlier in the campaign, probably a little less highlighted at this stage.
He was this close to being champion trainer. Willie Mullins has now twice pulled off an extraordinary feat of winning the Grand National. He ended up having the first, second and third, and winning the Scottish Grand National. I mean, if he keeps that rate of form up, then he'll be champion trainer again. But if that doesn't happen, if somebody else breaks that stranglehold and somebody else wins the Grand National, that in itself will sway the title potentially to Dan, as long as he has a good season.
I'd expect so. I think probably being unfortunate, especially last season, the way things transpired late on. Couldn't have gone any more smoothly for Willie, really, with the runners he sent over to Britain, certainly at Aintree and then on to Ayr. But I think Dan, and you say this going into this year, they'll have high hopes, obviously, for the new line and picking up some good prize money earlier in the campaign. We spoke about him on the last podcast, and I say champion hurdle aside, I think the races like the Fighting Fifth and Christmas Hurdle will be important to the Skelton team in terms of the championship. So, yeah, he's got a really strong team of young horses, but say those top-end horses will be well placed. The likes of Lord of Sud as well, and Grey Dawn, and I assume we'll come back to Haydock for another crack at the Betfair Chase. And that's one thing about Dan Skelton. Similarly to Paul Nicholls over the years, I think they place the horses well in those graded races throughout the season, and it's not all just about looking towards Cheltenham with those.
No, and he will have amassed a massive amount of prize money as long as everything goes well, before the Cheltenham Festival. Then it's just a matter of can he hold off the Willie Mullins battalion. But the first horse of Novice Hurdlers to follow for the new season is Bossman Jack from the down Skelton yard. Friend of the show, David Pipe, who hopefully we'll be talking to very soon. Looks like he's got a very exciting young team. We just spoke with Tom Malone a few minutes ago. He's got some very, very interesting horses to talk to you about. We'll release that podcast later in the week. Make sure you've hit the subscribe button so you don't miss that. And make sure you smash a like on this episode as well to show your appreciation for Paul Ferguson. But Gentleman Toboot is the first of the David Pipe horses to talk about. Why?
Probably a more obvious selection from the Pipe Yard would have been Win Beneath My Wings, who absolutely bolted up on his British debut in a listed bumper at Ascot. He looks a hugely exciting prospect, and I'll be interested to listen to what Tom has to say if he mentions him, and whether he mentions a horse called No Walkover now as one of a few young pointers that they've brought to the Pipe Yard who they're quite looking forward to. So I'll be interested to hear if he gives a mention to them. But the one I went with again, probably tried to just avoid the obvious one rather than going for Win Beneath My Wings. And Gentleman Toboot didn't do much wrong himself in bumpers, even though he only won once from 3 starts last year. Again, Irish point winner. He finished third behind Idaho Sun in a Newton Abbott bumper last October when he travelled really well for a long way. And that form worked out extremely well. Idaho Sun won again at the Winter Millions fixture later on in the season at Windsor before finishing 6th in the champion bumper. The second was a listed winner for Dan Skelton, and there was other winners over hurdles in behind. That worked out really well. There's nothing wrong with that debut. He came out and absolutely bolted up in a weaker race, admittedly, at Fontwell on Boxing Day. Perhaps a shade disappointing maybe that he was beaten, having travelled so well at Chepstow on his final start, but that came in heavy ground under a penalty, and he had tanked through the race. He is a little bit keen, so he just will need to learn to relax as he matures and with racing. But interviewing Jack Tudor for the book, I think he's undergone a wind operation over the summer, so that should help in that regard, and hopefully 8 flights of hurdles will help him settle down a bit too. But I think he's, given the way he travelled through them 3 bumpers, and indeed his point to point, and that form's not bad either. He beat a horse called Gaelic Pride in his point to point, who ended up coming out and winning a bumper for Warren Great Treks before running in the grade 2 at Aintree. So again, his form stacks up well if he just learns to relax and see out his races a little bit better. And those 2 races he was beaten on were on heavy ground as well, so could have been factored into that. But I think he's obviously a horse with a lot of natural talent, and he should be winning races over hurdles this season. By
Starzand out of a High Chaparral mare, he's bred to be pretty classy indeed. And as you said, he's won on soft. He's been placed twice on heavy ground. Just very briefly on Idaho Sun, who he was behind and then ran a big race in the champion bumper. Do you want to just touch on him a little bit?
Yeah, again, he's probably he's certainly one out of the main protagonists of the champion bumper who I would take out. And time will tell how that form will work out. It's hard to say. People were saying the form was franked with heads up coming out and winning that list all recently, but you would expect him to come out champion bumper second and come out and win a maiden hurdle at that time of year, late September. So it'll be over time. We'll see how that form works out. But I thought it was certainly an above average champion bumper. Say at least Idaho Sun's a horse who had impressed me earlier in the season. Again, obviously through that form line with Gentleman Toboot, so I was quite keen to follow that form line throughout the season. I say he won a decent race under his penalty at Windsor, again staying on strongly. And if you watch the champion bumper back, I actually watched these horses back again this morning, even though I'd obviously reviewed them in great detail over the summer, but just to refresh myself, and I forgot just how much ground he had actually made up in the champion bumper. So if you go back and watch at the bottom of the hill, it doesn't look like he'd be involved at all, and he was just closing hand over fist. I thought he would develop into a stayer. His pedigree and running style both suggest that he wants a trip. So I thought he'd be wanting to start at 2.5 and may even be up to 3 miles before the end of the season. But listening to Harry Fry recently in his open day quotes and things, it does sound like he thinks he'd be campaigned over the minimum trip and may even be one for the Forming Officers Hurdle here at Aintree on Boxing Day, provided that things go to plan early in the season. So obviously, again, he's one held in high esteem, and I'd say he'd be one I'd be looking to boost that form from the champion bumper.
And a horse who missed the champion bumper is a horse that I think would have had a huge role to play in it. Win Beneath My Wings is also for the David Pipe Yard, so that brings us back to the number 2 horse, Gentleman Toboot. Yeah. He's obviously a horse that he's extremely, extremely exciting, and Tom Malone reports him in good form.
Yeah, that's good too. Yeah. Oh, geez, like the way he won at Ascot on his first start for David. It was almost one of those you wanted to see it again to believe it was true. But his form in Ireland stacked up well. To be fair, he had form again with heads up. He went on to finish second in the champion bumper, so his form over there wasn't too shabby either, and it was a big step forward, obviously at Ascot, but he did look like a top class prospect. And the way David is talking about him suggests that they think that he is down a pond house. So hopefully he'll be out. And I say, Gentleman Toboot might be one, even though there was an argument to be made that he wasn't finishing his races off strongly. But in time, I would imagine he'd be going up in trip. Whereas the way David talks about Wind Beneath My Wings, I imagine he'll be kept to the minimum trip for now.
It's a really exciting team for David, at least on paper anyway. They have to go and do it now on the track. Things are looking much more positive this season than they did this time last year for David.
Yeah, it's good. And it's good to see it. A couple of the stables who I'll touch on next before we get to the Irish horses. It's nice to see we've got a bit of resurgence from those yards, and Philip Hobbs and Johnson White and Nicky Richards will be another couple I get to. And so I think Dave, as well as David, have got strong teams of novice hurdlers, and it's good to see. David have another one in the colours of JP McManus. Failed to win a couple of points. Brass, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce him right, Brado. So he was beaten in a bumper of Fontwell, but he raced just a bit keenly and looked like a horse who would benefit from his summer break and a bit more maturity. So again, he'd be another one. And I would expect David to have a good season in the novice hurdle division. So
to wrap up Gentleman Toboot, he's a 12-length point-to-point winner. He's third behind a horse who runs a big race in the Champion Bumper. He's a wide margin 16-length winner of a Fontwell Bumper, and then he's finished second at Chepstow on heavy ground. The most notable thing is the fact he sent off 2-1 on favourite the day he wins by 16 lengths, and 10-11 favourite when he was narrowly beaten. So clearly there's a bit of confidence in him in the betting as well. Trip and ground from this season, soft side, intermediate trip.
Yeah, I'd say so. I wouldn't be surprised. He used to say, given that keenness throughout the bumpers, I wouldn't be surprised if David started them off maybe on a stiff track over the minimum trip. You say, if you look at a bumper horse in the same colours last year, actually, for Brocade Racing, Gerancon, I was just waiting for him to go up in trip all year last year, but he kept performing well at the minimum trip. And it was interesting interviewing Jack for the book. He said it was almost by design that he was happy that he was still performing, so let's not go up in trip until we really have to. So I think, obviously, just digressing slightly off away from the novice hurdlers, but he'd be one who I'd expect improvements to be forthcoming once he goes up in trip this season in handicap company. But I think Gentleman Toboot might be the same. We might see him start at the minimum trip, and if he's performing at that level, he might well stay there until he needs to go up. But I say, as he learns to relax and race more efficiently, I would imagine that he'll probably need an intermediate trip, yeah.
Okay. Heron in the Park is the next horse we're going to switch to. The man who's going to be in charge of Ile Francais this season, Tom George, will be unleashing this one. He's a walk in the park. Won his point-to-point by 9.5 lengths, and won his only start in a bumper by 2.
Yes, she's a big imposing filly, as you say, by walking the park. And I think that Newbury bumper will work out quite well, because I know Ollie thinks quite a lot of the second there. Runs Mary, who was conceding a penalty to the winner. She'd won at Wincanton first time out, and the third actually went on and ran reasonably okay in a bumper at Cheltenham. So I think there is a bit of context to that form. As you say, she'd won a point-to-point on good ground before, changing hands for big money. She's a big imposing filly by walking the park. So again, going hurdling, you would expect to bring about further improvement. I just thought she had a little bit more natural pace than Runs Mary, despite the official ground being soft at Newbury. I thought she just had a bit more natural speed than the runner-up, who will want deep ground this winter. So yeah, Heron in the Park. Again, I imagine she'll start off over 2 miles for the time being. I think Tom's already mentioned the possibility of going to Newbury for the Hennessy meeting, or the Winter Carnival, whatever they call it now, for the listed novice hurdle. So I'd imagine he'd be wanting to get her out fairly soon and get a win on the board, if that's an early season target for her.
I know the point-to-point people were very, very excited by her, because she'd won in the fastest time on the card, which included 2 gelding maidens. But that performance at Newbury on debut, I mean, you could call her the winner of a fair way out. She just oozed class throughout the race. And she's a horse who costs an awful lot of money. She's related to Glory and Fortune. And the future is very bright for this horse.
Yeah, and I think she's got plenty of pace. Like you say, she clocked a good time in her point-to-point, but the way she travelled through both races, the point-to-point and the bumper, anyone knows who reads my work and listens to me will know that I'm a bit of a sucker for a smooth traveller, and she does look like she's got a touch of class about her. And yeah, as you said, Tom George will be in charge of Ile Francais this year, so it could be, again, he could be a stable coming back on the up this season.
Yeah, hopefully. She may very well develop into a contender for the Mayor's Novice Hurdle. Maybe it's too early to be talking about such things.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me, to be honest. Think she's got a bit of natural pace. So I'd say if he's already looking at that listed race at Newbury, I think he's obviously thinking about campaigning over the minimum trip to begin with. Let's see if the first half of the season goes well. There's probably no reason why not to start thinking about the Dawn run.
Yeah, I thought she might run the Mare's bumper at Aintree, but they elected to not do that. It's probably going to pay dividends.
Yeah, given the size of it, whether I say she's got a bit of speed, but whether she'd have wanted quick ground, relatively decent ground, come the Friday and Saturday at Aintree, whether she would have wanted those conditions remains to be seen. But yeah, at this stage anyway, she certainly falls into the could be anything category, I'd say.
Very much so. And she's a horse you want to see in a better class of race as well to see what she can do. Very exciting horse. Heron in the Park for Tom George. Mossy Fen Road for friend of the show, Harry Derham, is next up.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, he was an expensive purchase after having won his point-to-point. He won his point-to-point on heavy ground, and I like that performance. But it was his rules debut that was interesting. I think the interesting thing with Mossy Fen Road was he was actually a non-runner in November over hurdles, and then he didn't get him out until the second half of the season, so that's why he ended up going in bumpers. So I think the intention was obviously there to send him straight over hurdles, but he didn't really actually make his rules debut until the 1st of February in a soft ground bumper at Wetherby. And just the way he made his ground up, turning for home down the side of the course, he was dropped right out by Johnny Burke, and he just made up a huge amount of ground in a short space of time, and found himself in the lead on the stand side rail. And it was that move during the race that really stood out to me. He went away and won impressively from a useful horse called Order of the Day. I think that form was pretty strong. Admittedly, he was a little bit disappointing, maybe you could say, only finishing 9th in the Grade 2 at Aintree, but I think the ground had gone against him then. So he won his bumper on on heavy ground. His Wetherby bumper was on soft ground. By Fleming's his half brother to Fury Road, who was obviously a Grade 1 winning novice chaser over 3 miles. I think once his stamina is drawn out, and conditions are probably just on the quick side at Aintree for him. Stamina drawn out, so I'd expect him 2.5 miles soft ground. I think I'd be disappointed if he's not bouncing back to winning ways over hurdles. I'd certainly be hopeful he could win a couple and maybe develop into a graded class performer. And if that is to be the case, I'd say that could be mid-season, somewhere on a bit of soft ground rather than. It might well be that he's fine on better ground as he goes up in trip later in the campaign. But I do think at this stage he wants a bit of nice soft ground. So if he is to win a graded race, it might come in the middle part of the season.
Intermediate trips from, given that he's at Flemsforth?
Yeah, I'd say so, yeah. He said again, might be the Harry opts to start him off over 2 miles around the stiff track, but I would think if he came somewhere like Aintree or something like that, I'd say it'd be 2.5 to begin with in a maiden hurdle. And I think that kind of the trip on soft and proper winter ground will really suit him this year.
It's been a very impressive start to his career for Harry Derham, and it's still very much in the early stages, but he could have a really good season.
He could, excuse me. Building up a really good team, yeah. I was down there a couple of weeks ago, and he's got plenty of nice point-to-point recruits. Obviously, the two that cost a lot of money from the Cheltenham Festival sale, trying to remember them, Crystal d'Estraval and Clondor Park. They've been joined by a couple of others. Simon Munier and Isaac Swade had a nice horse on the Gallop so called Le Frimure. Whether I've pronounced that correctly remains to be seen. He was impressive when he won his point-to-point for the Crawfords. So yeah, he's building up a really nice team, Harry Derham. I'd say one thing Harry will be looking at though is he has got a few nice horses in the David Maxwell colours. So whether they're all still in training in his yard post the Friday, the Cheltenham October meeting when the sale takes place, I think that could be key to how significant and how good a season he has maybe.
Yeah, that's going to be really interesting to see how that all pans out, who gets them, where do they go, and how many trainers who have a David Maxwell horse goes out of their way to keep them. Queensbury Boy, you'd imagine, is one that Harry will want to keep hold of. Yeah, certainly they're talking him up for Friday's Persian War, aren't they? And beforehand, well, David Maxwell certainly is. He was actually one of my leading prospects last year, and he didn't do much wrong, obviously. Until Punchestown, he's got a bit of experience going into that race, being he's not a second season novice. He's only eligible till novices till the end of November. But I think it's significant that David's allowing Harry to run him on Friday, because I think
I believe a lot of the other horses didn't remain in training with their trainers. When you're reading a Tattel's report, so yeah, he's got probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 nice horses of David's horse from France who's never actually run in Britain, called Just NME. He was meant to be going chasing. He actually held an entry in the Imperial Cup at the back end of last season, but didn't make it to the track. He's currently rated 128. Again, digressing slightly here from the Novice Hurdlers, but he'd be one to follow in handicaps, and I say I'm pretty sure he'd be one that Harry wants to keep hold of.
What's that name again?
Just NME.
Into the tracker straight away. It is going to be interesting to see how all that pans out, and it's just also going to be intriguing to see if David comes back into the game at some point, hopefully in a couple of years. And I understand why he wants to step away from it now. He doesn't want the pain of seeing somebody else riding his horses, but that's a character that racing really can't afford to lose.
Yeah, I found it quite fascinating, actually. I was thought to getting to that stage of life. I think he's a similar age to me. I'd have been if I had his money, I think I'd have been happy sitting in the owners and trainers watching those horses perform well. But obviously, it's a different way to look at it if you've been riding them yourself. So fair play to him, and as you say, hopefully he will make a return at some stage. Yeah,
we've never ridden a racehorse on the track and been part of that camaraderie in the wearing room and the adrenaline rush of jumping fences, or even the intra-grand national fences for that matter. We've done it from the parade ring and cheering the horses on. It must be a very different thing, and he probably just needs to get that out of his system for a little bit and then come back to the sport. Adam Mills has told me that there's quite a few of the horses he owned in France have already been sold. And they've been sold privately to very high-profile owners. So it's interesting that these horses are going to auction, and we'll see how that goes, because I'm sure there's been plenty of offers for El Kairos and plenty of others. El Kairos is not on your list, but how do you think he's going to get on this season, and how popular do you think he'll be at the sale?
Yeah, I'd imagine he'd be top lot. Yeah, he is. I actually wrote when I was writing him up in the book, and he featured in the Around the Yard section, I actually mentioned the ride at Punchestown and the fact that you do have to factor in that David would be riding him. And he didn't look totally, I didn't think he looked totally straightforward, even in the champion bumper. I thought he veered off slightly as well. So no disrespect to David, but I think a professional getting on board and would certainly improve him in that regard. And I would imagine wherever he ends up, whether he remains with the Moors or someone else makes a big offer and he moves stables, I'd imagine something like you might want to keep him to a track where there's a left-handed track where there's a rail up the inside. I think I wrote something along those lines in the book. And I think it's safe to say if he'd kept on a straight and narrow, he would have won at Punchestown, and his form obviously earlier in the season stacks up well. He kind of run away with David a little bit when he won at Newbury, so I thought he was either being in the high bunch of bumper horses from this side of the RSC. So yeah, and I would expect he would easily be top lot, I would have thought. I'd be surprised if he's not at the sale in a couple of weeks. I'd imagine he'll be going for big money.
Well, he's already made firepower. You don't have to wait. He's going to be good to go now. He's basically plug and play. You just got to put him over a few hurdles. Now, whether he's got the scope for fences is another matter, but we're talking about the here and now, and people are prepared to pay a lot of money for a horse that's going to be a Cheltenham contender. And if he transitions that talent to hurdles, then he should be a major player. It is kind of wild, though, and I don't want to expect didn't do this, but there was a number of bookmakers who just cut him for the Supreme Novice Hurdle on the back of David Maxwell retiring, which, David, we love you. We're big fans of you. And we really want you to come on the show because he's a fantastic character and he's a really great personality. But that's highly insulting, Paul Ferguson. Highly insulting from the odds compilers to cut that horse for the Supreme on the back of the jockey retiring.
Yeah, insulting, yeah. But they don't need that. They don't need many excuses to change those prices nowadays, do they? So.
Oh, hold on. Sorry, we've just been given an update here. Nicky Henderson has told us that Constitution Hill has ate up this morning. He's had a big bowl of oats. He's in great form. And sorry, we have another update here. Oh, he's been caught in the betting for the champion hurdle after that positive update. Yeah, they'll cut it for anything. That's why you want to bet with 1xBet. Stick it to the big corporate bookmakers who are engaged in account restrictions left, right, and centre, and side with the new boys. 1xBet. Bet now. More Final Furlong podcast races coming your way very, very soon. All right, the fifth horse to talk about is from the Philip Hobbs and Johnson White team. You're going for Starzand.
Yeah, and again, this is a team who I think will enjoy a really good season in Novice Hurdles. Nice to see Phillip and Johnson with a few really promising bumper horses from last season. Sober Glory, again, would be the obvious one. He won all 3 starts, including a listed bumper at Newbury. Again, that would have form at times. It ties in with El Kairos collaterally because he had a Baron Noir in behind him that day, who then came out, obviously, and won the Punchestown race. Sober Glory would be an exciting prospect. Captain Hugo was another one I liked. He actually won after the turn of the year. He won in May, so effectively this season, but the back end. But I've gone for Starzand. Again, a point-to-point winner. He wanted to second attempt once up to 3 miles on slightly better ground. He was beaten over 2.5 on heavy ground by a maiden hurdle winner in Ireland last season. I'm not going to try and pronounce his name. If you want to do so, you go ahead. I'll butcher
Gaurav
that
Mahagot.
How does he say?
Gaurav Mahagot.
There you go.
No,
what does it mean? Someone told me last year. What does it mean? Don't lay yourself down now. Come on. Someone told me last year.
Gaurav Mahagot means thank you.
Yeah, there you go. That's it. Yeah.
So if Sarah Lynham was on the show and she can speak fluent Irish, then she would embarrass me with a really eloquent pronunciation of that. But we'll go with, for the purposes of this podcast, Gaurav Mahagot.
That's much better than I could have done anyway. So he was second to that horse on first start, and he won his point-to-point by 25 lengths, and he came out and won a Foss last bumper in the spring on decent ground. It was only a 5-runner race, but the manner of success was pretty impressive. I liked the way he went through the race. He was enthusiastic. Again, given how enthusiastic he was, wouldn't be a surprise to see him start off over a stiff 2 miles before going up in trip. But I just loved the way he went through the race. And he was well on top and doing his best work inside the final couple of furlongs. So in time, he probably will want an intermediate trip. And even further as he goes up in his career, he's definitely a future chaser down the line. But say this season, I expect him to do well in Novice Hurdlers.
You mentioned Sober Glory. That's a horse we talk about with Tom Malone on the next podcast that's coming your way very, very soon as well on the Fan Forum podcast. They really do have a really nice team. It's the David Pipe team look to have a lot of young, exciting horses come through, Barracote horses as well, for that matter. But so too do the Hobbs and White partnership. Yeah,
they definitely do. Yeah, saying starting back up, it's been a little bit disappointing to see Phillips' figures tailed off a bit over the last few years. But I say they enjoyed a slightly resurgent season, so to speak, in the bumper division last year. And yeah, I'd expect them to have a good year in the Novice Hurdlers. So they'd be the 3 main ones I'd be looking towards from the yard. Sober Glory, Stars, and then Captain Hugo is probably a little bit be less familiar to some listeners.
And ideal trip for you in mind for Starzand?
Starzand, I say, just given how he was quite enthusiastic through the race. If he went to a galloping track like back to Fosslas or an Exeter or somewhere, Chepstow, I'd imagine he could start off over the minimum trip, but probably an intermediate trip at some stage throughout the season. And in time, say he's a lovely long-term prospect and he looks to stay and chase of the future. But I'd say for now, this season, his ideal trip probably will be around 2.5, 2.5.
Yeah, he could be a smashing horse for sure. Definitely going into the tracker. All of these, of course, featuring in Paul Ferguson's Jumpers to Follow. But it's nice to hear the man himself give you his dulcet tones and his off-the-cuff reaction to these horses for the new season. And another one is number 6 for Nicky Richards upon Tweed.
Yeah, and his form was actually franked at the weekend because, albeit Conman John won a maiden hurdle at Kelso on Sunday. At prohibitive odds, he was heavily back Conman John, but upon Tweed beat him convincingly in a bumper at Newcastle and back in February. Travelled like a really good horse under Danny McMenamin. And beat him 8.5 lengths comfortably, just had far too much pace for him. That Conman John looks to stay at and won over 2 mile 5. I think it was on Sunday. After that bumper at Newcastle, Conman John did go and run reasonably well at Punchestown as well. So again, the form's got a little bit of context to it. Nicky Richards, as I touched on at the start of the show, is another trainer who I think had a good team of bump horses, and that was one of the main reasons why I was keen to get Danny McMenamin as part of the jockeys in the book this year, because I think it was the right time to bring Danny on board. He's one of the leading jockeys, obviously, in the north, but given the firepower that Nicky has at his disposal this year for Novice Hurdles, I was keen to get him involved this year, and he spoke glowingly about upon Tweed. So yeah, again, he looked like he had plenty of pace, so I think he'll be starting off over the minimum trip. And
he's a brother to, if in doubt, who won a listed handicap over 3 miles, so he's going to have lots of options stepping up as well.
Yeah, I think his pedigree suggests that he will in time, but he definitely didn't look to avoid the pace the way he travelled, hit the front, and quickened up stylishly. And I say again, I had 3 horses listed from Nicky's that I could have included here. The other 2 are Their Chances. He was the first winner of the Roonies since their short hiatus out of the National Hunt game. They came back last year, which was good to see. Good to have owners like that back in the game. He won a bumper at Ayr, and is from the family of Ed Wolf, I think. So he'll be a stayer in time. And another speed horse is Japatus or Japatus. He won 2 bumpers. He was beaten first time out and then won a couple of bumpers. I was actually talking to Nicky a couple of weeks ago up at Perth, and I think he's quick enough to go on the flat, that horse, actually. And Nicky didn't dismiss that totally. So even though he'll go novice hurdling this year, I think he might be one who might end up being a dual-purpose horse, Japatus or Japatus. Not sure how you pronounce it. But I went with Upon Tweed, to say visually he created a really good impression, and the form's held up a little bit by the runner-up already this season. So he'd be one I'd be excited about in the north.
Authorised has given us Tiger Roll, I Am Maximus, Nichols Canyon, the enigmatic Goshen. Oh my goodness, poor old Goshen. He's got Burrows Drive for this season, who's going to be going novice hurdling. And the last twice we saw him was a 5-length defeat to Copacabana at Navan, who's a horse we obviously know that the Mullins team think an awful lot of and was well fancied for the champion bumper. And then last time out, he absolutely bolted up against Majax Hill. Yeah,
and again, that form was advertised at the weekend, wasn't it, with the runner-up winning over hurdles at Goran on, whether it was Friday or Saturday he won it. Friday, I think it was. Burrows Drive looked to me like a proper stay-in type, and I just thought he got better with racing. He'd actually run once the previous spring, and he run really well in the Punchestown bumper, and he was beaten, I know in the end he was beaten 11.5 lengths by 6.5, but obviously we know from her exploits over hurdles and subsequent on the flat, she's a quite speedy mare. In second that day was Col Cannon, who developed into a fairly high-class bumper horse himself last year, so that was pretty strong form, and he was only left behind in the closing stages there, Burrows Drive, on relatively decent ground. That was at the 2024 Punchestown Festival, so that was strong form. He was off then for 285 days, as you say. There was a lot of talk about Copacabana at the time, and even though he didn't really back the form up afterwards, he was turned out quite quick at Cheltenham and things, so I wouldn't be surprised if Copacabana did well over hurdles this year for Willie Mullins. Again, I thought that was a more than respectable run from Burrows Drive, and he left that form behind when winning back at Navan. He won really impressively. Again, he just shaped like a stayer, and I think the further he goes over hurdles, the better. He's from the yard of Philip Dempsey, and he had a horse called Derham Ross in novice hurdles a couple of years ago who developed into a decent stayer. I think he actually won the Doran's Pride at Limerick over Christmas, and that kind of race programme, I would imagine, could be on the agenda for Burrows Drive. I thought, coming from this yard, he might just be one that goes under the radar a little.
That's a very informative race for the rest of the season as well. Even those who get beaten are horses to be following as the season goes on. You're getting me properly excited for the new jump season now. And if you're not already excited for the jump season, it's time to get that way. It's time to get yourself onto the weatherbyshop.ie for Ireland, .co.uk for Britain, and get yourself Paul Ferguson's Jumpers to Follow. Don't just listen to him here on the podcast. Read the man's gold content. Months and months of research and preparation goes into producing the goods for you. So much so, he didn't even watch the Arc on Sunday. I'm glued to the Arc, thankfully cheering on the winner. We could cheer on both the first and the second, thankfully, on the podcast. Paul, no interest. All National Hunt season, all the time.
I did tell you that the season got going over here on Sunday with Kelso and Utoxa, so I actually didn't watch any of it live because I was at the match watching Everton. So, but when I got
don't ruin this. No, Paul, don't. I'm trying to paint this picture of you hardworking, trying to get all the winners for people. Don't be spoiling it by saying I was watching the Everton game.
Yeah, I was at, but once I got home from the match, once I'd gone through Kelso and Utoxa, I did watch the Arc back then. So just to keep you happy.
Hey Paul, when we're doing the Breeders' Cup preparation over the next few weeks, and then we're covering the Breeders' Cup live, touchwood, all being well, with the help of God, how will you be watching the Breeders' Cup?
I'll definitely be at Wetherby on the Friday. I think we're sponsoring at Utoxa and Wetherby. I think I'll be at Wetherby on the Friday, so I'll be home in time to watch it. You have the Friday night now, don't they? I will watch it in the evening. So, and Everton aren't playing that Saturday; they're playing on the Monday night, so I might get to watch them.
Paul Ferguson, jumpers to follow, handicaps, novice hurdles coming your way very, very soon to a racecourse near you. And of course, at the Curragh, we've got at least another 7 races to come with 1xBet. And at least 3 more Final Furlong podcast handicaps coming your way too. There's a big 1xBet series as well, where whoever accumulates the most points, that stable will go into a draw from the 10 handicap races. So we've had 3 run already, 7 more to go. Whoever accumulates the most points that yard will go into a draw, and 1 member of their stable staff will win VIP trip to Paris Saint-Germain in, it's either a Ligue 1 game or a Champions League game. Does it even matter? It can be their equivalent of the Carabao Cup, essentially. You're going to get to go to Paris to see PSG play, as 1xBet are an official betting partner of Paris Saint-Germain and of Barcelona. So that prize to be announced very, very soon with the Curragh and the Final Furlong podcast and 1xBet.ie. You can get £3 off Paul Ferguson's excellent jumpers to follow with Weatherby's right now using your exclusive promo code from the Final Furlong podcast, FFJTF2526. Final Furlong jumpers to follow 2526 at weatherbyshop.co.uk, weatherbyshop.ie. It gets you £3 or €3 off the print, the digital, or the print and digital bundle. That's the one I got, the best of both worlds. Have it on the tablet, have it in the physical copy, the old school book. Get your copy now. Weatherbyshop.co.uk, weatherbyshop.ie, FFJTF2526, £3 off the essential guide to the new jump season, Paul Ferguson's jumpers to follow. And your next horse to follow, number 8, read to our old friend Willie Mullins, the first of the Willie Mullins bingo, Dr. de Mesnil.
Yeah, I was actually, I did try when I came to the 4 Irish, I also did try and maybe not go with a couple of, and I still ended up with 2 from Willie's, but I tried to avoid the obvious, the ones who'd run in the graded bumpers and things. But this Dr. Mesnil created a deep impression on me. I think it was either Easter, it was over the Easter weekend anyway, so a lot of the focus would have been on Fairyhouse rather than Cork, where he ran in a 2-mile 3 bumper and won impressively under Jody Townend. He beat a horse, the Devil You Know, by 11 lengths, and although he was beaten next time, he did shape quite well the runner up and finished a lot closer on his second start. So, but Dr. Mesnil, I thought Jody kept him wide. It was just a case of keeping him out of trouble, and it's a bit of a point and shoot job up the home straight. And the further he went, actually, I thought the better he looked. He's a 5-year-old son of Dr. Dino. I've heard people talking him up as a possible supreme Ballymore horse. To my eye, he looked more of a staying type. Whether that materialises, we know Willie doesn't mind running them into when the bumpers appear and the novice hurdles and maiden hurdles, so we'll probably learn more. But I just thought the way he finished his race, possibly more of a stayer than a speed horse. But so time will tell in that regard. But I love the way he got the job done, and he was really powerful through the line, which again is something I look for in a bumper horse, and I would expect him to be fairly high up among the ranks of the Mullins bumper novice hurdlers this year. Well,
given the fact that Dr. Dino has given Willie Mullins Sharjah and State Man, whenever you're seeing a sire of that success rate going back into the yard, you've got to be keeping a very close eye on him, and he was really, really impressive at Cork. Minimum trip would seem ideal.
Yes, yeah, like obviously the Dr. Dino side, when you talk about State Man and Sharjah, I think he'd be quick enough to win a maiden hurdle over the minimum trip, but I thought his best work was inside the last couple of furlongs, and say it was best part of 2.5 miles, that bumper. So I thought if anything, he'd probably be more of a staying type over hurdle. So we'll learn plenty more in his first couple of starts. Obviously, he's only had that 1 run to date, so we don't know too much about him.
Okay, Dam is a sister to Invincible Diva, who won a few races for Francois Nicole over the 2-mile 2 trip, and she herself raced 3 times over that trip as well. So going to be interesting to see. Dr. de Mesnil, any indication as to when the horse is going to start out?
No, well, typical of Willie. I wouldn't imagine it'd be as soon as some of the other horses we've talked about from Britain. I'd imagine more likely the middle to end part of November you'd be looking at, as normally when he unleashes his better prospects.
First round of Willie Mullins bingo for the new National Hunt season. It won't be the last round, though. Dr. de Mesnil, make sure he's in your tracker. It's only a game for Martin Brassil, who's going to have faster slow back in action this season, hopefully. And he wears those famous silks. What are you expecting from Martin Brassil's runner?
Yeah, I always think it's obviously Punchestown's a fairly local track to Martin, isn't it? He does tend to introduce his nicer horses, and certainly in the Mull Ryan silks at the Punchestown Festival. And again, that was the case here. I think he ran the same bumper, as City Island. at the start of his career. It was the final race of the Punchestown Festival, and although he was beaten 6 lengths, he pulled a long way clear of the remainder. The winner had first. The winner, I think, again, Vittoria PL for Emmet Mullins. I think he'll be a nice horse as well going forward. And he had the run of the race from the front, whereas Derek O'Connor had its own A game, anchored towards the back, but he circumnavigated the field, came round the outside, turned in and made up plenty of ground and pulled nicely clear of the remainder. I just thought there was a lot to like about the run. A 4-year-old by Goliath de Berlay again. He was a Grade 1 winner himself in France. Goliath de Berlay is seemingly becoming one of the popular sires. He had a couple of good bumper winners last year, a few point winners. I think he's a sire we'll hear a lot more of. Obviously, I think he was responsible for the Punchestown winner, the filly of Willie's Wonderful Every Day. So he'd be a sire to certainly keep an eye on throughout this season.
Goliath de Burlay is the sire to be keeping a close eye on. The horse who won that race that It's Only a Game made his debut in, for Emmet Mullins, I was there that day. He was packed as though defeat was out of the question. It was bonkers. I thought there was an awful lot to like about It's Only a Game, and Martin Brassil had the third as well, but as you said, they were miles clear of the rest. He's only a 4-year-old.
He pulled 12 lengths clear of his stablemate, Ladbroke Grove, so I think the front two are quite nice, but say track position, the winner was made all and was clear, like, so I think he the way It's Only a Game made up ground was quite eye-catching, and he is a year younger than the winner, who's a 5-year-old as well, so there was a lot to like about it, and I thought he'd have no trouble winning an early season bumper if that was the case, but usually with those connections, he likes to press on, and I say it's a jumping pedigree, so it wouldn't surprise me if he went straight over hurdles in a 4-year-old maiden.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, one of the Leopardstown Christmas bumpers, Martin Brassil likes to target those. I was just wondering, would that be something you might go for, given the fact he's such a young horse?
Yeah, it's possible. But say he's out of a Marteline mare as well, being by Goliath de Berlay, so it is very much a jumping French pedigree. So either way, I think he's more than capable of winning a bumper, and if he was to do that, maybe he'd be kept for the better bumpers. But I thought, just in all likelihood, he'd probably go over hurdles, but it isn't something I've been made aware of at this stage.
Well, Martin Brassil is not one to shy away from a challenge, so perhaps hurdling will be the thing to do. But whatever they choose to do, It's Only a Game is going to be a very exciting horse for the new season. He's got a world of potential, and we do get a second Willie Mullins horse. Number 10, your 10th of 10, is a wide margin winner for Willie Mullins called Kaiser Ball. He was ridden by Tom Costello that day. I'd imagine that young Costello will be on board him every single time he runs, within reason, as long as he can do the weight, and there's no reason to think he can't. Interesting winner at Fairyhouse. Yeah,
he was. I just loved the way he travelled through the race, and again, I was slightly surprised he didn't run again. I'm pretty sure he held an entry at the Punchestown Festival in the winners' bumper, but we didn't get to see him again. But it was more a case of visual impression with him. As soon as he won, I was like, he was also I wanted to have on side, and I knew instantly. Sometimes you see a bumper and you know instantly that he'd be a horse that features prominently in the next edition of Jumpers to Follow, and that was very much the case with him when he won a Fairyhouse. In terms of the form, the favourite for that race, he was back in 5th. He was beaten a long way, so whether he runs to form remains to be seen, but that was stick to the plan. He was a listed winner over hurdles at the Galway Festival and is now in training over here with Ollie Murphy, and goes, I believe, for the Persian War on Friday as well. So there was a bit of context to that form as well. And Kaiser Ball was pretty impressive. And again, pedigree-wise, he's actually a full brother to a horse called Juby Ball, who won both starts over hurdles. He was 2 from 2 for Evan Williams last year, and he's another horse who features prominently in the book this year. I think it's obviously a decent pedigree, and the pair of them are half brothers to 50 Ball, who was a decent handicap hurdler for Gary Moore a few years ago. So he's got the pedigree to back up that initial impression he created on debut. And again, maybe not one of the obvious ones from Willie Mullins' battalion of bumper horses from last season, but he was one who created a really good impression on me.
Yeah, for sure. And I just wondered, the Barry Connell horse who was second that day, he was pretty strong in the betting, but the one who was very strong in the betting in the morning, and he's in my tracker because I was checking these horses this morning. There's no note, frustratingly, so I don't know why he was in there. I have a feeling Patrick Mullins spoke very, very positively about him. He drifted before the off from 2-1 out to 9-4, but Arslan seemed to be a horse that the Mullins camp were holding in pretty high regard. Patrick rode him that day. Obviously, Tom was always going to be riding Kaiser Ball, but he battered them.
Yeah, he did. And I say it was another case of similar to the last 3 horses we mentioned. Really, he just swept around the outside of the field and put the race to bed pretty quickly. And I say again, he was powering away inside the closing stages, doing his best work late on, pretty strong through the line. So yeah, he'd be again similar comments to some of the other horses I've said. I'd imagine he'd be quick enough to win a maiden hurdle over 2 miles to begin with, and then he'll make a plan from there.
And spoiler alert, the horse that you mentioned is now with Ollie Murphy, Stick to the Plan. That's a horse that Tom Malone has a lot to say about in an upcoming episode of the Final Furlong podcast, one that they're pretty excited about. You know how I was saying that David Maxwell let it slip that his horse is going to win the Persian War Novices Hurdle? So are we going to let that Tom Malone podcast out before the weekend? We've got to...
Sounds like you need to.
So we have this podcast with you, which is coming out on Tuesday, as far as I know, Tuesday evening. We have a Friday Newmarket preview. We're recording on Wednesday. We have the usual Thursday preview. So I'm not sure if the Tom podcast is coming out until Saturday evening or Sunday. So maybe I should say this now for the record. David Maxwell let it slip that Harry Derham was like, no, don't retire. We've got Queensberry Boy and he's going to win the Persian War. And of course, every odds checker, there's a free shout out for you guys. Every odds compiler just smashes him into 6-4 for the Persian War. Well, Tom Malone basically told the connections of Stick to the Plan, yeah, you'll win the Persian War. And when I told him about David Maxwell's bullishness about Queensberry Boy and how Harry Durham likes him, he's like, yeah, that's great. We'll win the Persian War. You'll hear it for yourself in an upcoming episode of the Final Furlong podcast. That horse is 100-30. Stick to the plan, and he's got form, obviously, with Kaiser Ball. Just finally, targets this season, where would you like to see him start off? Or over trip-wise, at least?
I would imagine it'll just be a case of Whitfield just find a maiden hurdle when he's ready, won't he? And I'd imagine he didn't look short of pace neither, so I suspect he'll start over 2 miles before any future plans are made.
Okay, a couple of bonus ones. We've already mentioned Idaho Sun from the Champion Bumper. It would be remiss of us to not mention the winner of the race, Bambino Fever. I think a lot of people are just assuming she's going to be the major player or the one to beat in the Mayor's Novice Hurdle. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, well, I certainly expected she'd go down that route. She's definitely good. She's good enough, as she showed at Cheltenham and Punchestown, to take on the boys. But we know from past history that Willie tends to keep his mares to their own sex when possible, and I imagine that the Dawn Run would be her end of season target, and it's not hard to see her being difficult to beat in mares, maiden and novice hurdles beforehand. What I would say is that the filly we touched upon, who won at Punchestown, I was pretty impressed with as well. Wonderful Every Day, who carried the Brian Drew colours. I thought she was pretty impressive when she won the 4-year-old. She won the Land Rover bumper, didn't she, or whatever it was, sponsored by this year. The Goffs Defender bumper, I think it was called this year. Again, I think I'd expect she's go straight over hurdles, and she'd be another one for this division, while Bambino Fever would be the obvious mare from Willie's. I'd say Wonderful Every Day wouldn't be too far behind, judged on that. The impression she made there. But her bumper performance, say we've solidly touched on the Champion Bumper before. She won that comfortably. I know she was only a length and a half clear at the end, and she confirmed the form at Punchestown. She did nothing but improve throughout the season. She's got plenty of experience on side, so there's not much not to like about Bambino Fever, really. But I've seen people talking about as a possible supreme novice horse. I'd be surprised if she ended up down that route, personally.
I'd be very surprised. I would imagine it's all roads leads to the Mayor's Novice Hurdle, unless the owners were to try and sway, but it's Willie Mullins' way or the highway, basically.
No, I'd say the only way, if she came out early and won, and then was ready to go to Leopardstown for the 2 mile grade one maybe and take on the boys there, and she beat them well at either Christmas or the Dublin Racing Festival, then it might become an option. But I would have thought, past history tells us that in all likelihood she will end up in the Mayor's Novice Hurdle if all goes to plan in the first half of the season. Yeah,
I would agree with you. And what some might consider to be an also-ran from the Champion Bumper, but a horse who was wildly impressive on his debut. Ella McNeil was telling us that she was pretty nervous the day this horse made his debut. It was New Year's Eve, because the word was out that the Skeltons had an absolute superstar, a machine who couldn't be beaten. He was a late scratch from the Champion Bumper. He didn't make the final declarations, but Dan Skelton seriously considered running him in the race, the horse who was second that day. But Paul Nicholls' horse taught him a bit of a lesson on his racecourse debut, and then was considered good enough to go contest the champion bumper. No drama this end. What do you expect from him this season?
Yeah, he'd be another one I'd take from the horses from this side of the Irish out to the champion bumper. He was hugely impressive at Warwick, and I'd agree with what Ella said. I think it was clearly two nice horses on show that day. Kept the board, his point-to-point form was good as well. I'd say with him, maybe this season, the Skelton horse, he still looked quite big and raw, I thought. And I know, talking to Harry for the book, I think they're already looking forward to him going chasing in a year's time. So whether he has quite as a stronger season over in Novice Hurdles, whether he's campaigned in the same way, remains to be seen. But I'd expect him to improve plenty for going hurdling and stepping up to 2.5 miles. Similarly for No Drama this end. And I thought the one thing I've thought interesting from the champion bump, speaking to the jockeys over the summer for the book, a lot of them said that the race wasn't run to suit hold-up horses, and it was very stop-start. It wasn't an end-to-end gallop that it normally is, and a lot of them thought their chances were gone from an early stage. So I just think the way it panned out, those who were in behind maybe were a bit more inconvenienced by the way the race was run. No Drama this end to say, prior to that, I'd really impressed at Warwick. And again, stepping up in trip should suit him. And I think 2.5 miles, I think he'd possibly be on again. He'd be quick enough to win on a stiff galloping track. But I think he'd won 2.5 before too long. Might be that he ends up on his second start in that novice hurdle at Newbury again at the big Hennessy meeting. Paul's gone that way before with the likes of Stage Star and Brave Man's Game before they've gone back to Newbury for the Shallow. Wouldn't be a surprise to see No Drama this end follow a similar path.
Okay, no disrespect to the runner-up and the third and the champion bumper, but they were, for that matter, the fourth as well. They were all wild prices. So it makes sense that it was a bit of a falsely run race that didn't pan out particularly well for those in behind.
Yeah, and having listened to some of the jockeys, then maybe that was something which would explain the run of Idaho Sun as well, which he was maybe outpaced at first before coming back up the hill. So it's just something to bear in mind. But again, we touched on it. Heads Up's obviously come out and won, but you can't really call out a form. Frank and he's winning the maiden hurdle in September, as you'd expect. Fortune de Mer, who was down the field, was obviously beaten at your Toxter on Sunday. Not that you'd know because you were too busy watching Longchamp.
Absolutely.
But he was beaten in a novice hurdle for the Skelton team. So it'll be interesting to see. Say time will tell as to how strong the form is. But I'd certainly say Idaho Sun and No Drama this end will be winning races, and he should be contesting decent races this side of the Irish Sea during the coming months.
Well, the Yellow Clay was well held in a champion bumper, and he came out to be an elite novice hurdler last season, and he's an exciting hurdler for this season as well. So the fact that they have the experience of that, and Sortudo obviously came out and bolted up at Ferryhouse in his next start. So champion bumper tends to work out pretty well. It's rare that it's a weak one. The worst champion bumper in your memory? I'm going to say Lieberman's.
Lieberman, didn't he beat Trabolgan? Did he? I'm sure he beat Trabolgan, didn't he?
Was Trabolgan the only horse to come out of that race of any substance, though?
Don't know. He won a Hennessy, didn't he? He wasn't a bad horse. He won the RS.
Sometimes your memory of a race can
he won
fit.
He won the Broadway or the Brown Advisory. Yeah, he beat Trub in 2003.
Yeah, he beat
Trabolgan,
Widmouth Bay, Bowl Bishop, Miller's Bay, Bourbon Manhattan, Gova Mix, Kim Font. I'm sticking with this. This is the worst one.
No, but Bourbon Manhattan actually won Maiden at Aintree first time out when I'm sure Trabolgan ran in the same race and fell, and then he went unbeaten then for a while. Trabolgan after that.
Cornish Rebel was okay. Yeah. Royal Alphabet was all right.
Cornish Rebel, best mates, brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd say there's probably been worse champion bumpers than that.
I don't know. I'm going to stick with Lieberman. I'm pretty confident that was the worst one. What's your worst champion bumper?
Cornish Rebel won a Grade 1 that season as well. Novice hurdle.
Yeah, but the champion bumper is supposed to be. You're supposed to be getting multiple Grade 1 winners out of these races. Like
my worst.
Pizarro, Rhinestone Cowboy, back in front, Iris's Gift. Like we went from that.
Yeah. That was an unbelievable one.
Yeah.
Let me look in recent times.
Cork All-Star, maybe?
Yeah, I don't think that was a great race. I don't think Harry Molly is in 2006. What did he beat?
Oh dear.
Don't think that was a great. Yeah, to be fair, no, she was 2004 with Total Enjoyment, 2 mares, wasn't it?
That was it.
Yeah, no, it was. It was 2006 wasn't great. Beat Press Gang, Kicks for Free wasn't bad in third, but yeah, I'd say.
Deary me. Okay, well, hold on. Hold up. Wait a minute. Paul Ferguson, you're completely wrong. I know you didn't say it. I suggested Cork All-Star, but I'm still going to, you agreed with me, so I'm going to blame you. How dare you, Paul Ferguson? 543, Cool Dine. Anybody else? Is there anybody else? Den of Iniquity. We liked that horse back in the day. Yeah, there was a couple of horses came out of Cork All-Stars bumper, to be fair. Moral of the story is the champion bumper form is supposed to work out every single year, just like the Derby form is supposed to work out every single year, but it doesn't always.
It's never a bad Weatherby's champion bumper, come on.
Not since Weatherby started sponsoring. Were they sponsoring it back in the Cork All-Star days?
Yeah. A long time ago.
Take that out, Neve. Take all of it out. The Weatherby's champion bumper is always the greatest race at the Cheltenham Festival, always, and it always produces multiple Grade 1 winners the next season. Weatherby's. You're a one-stop shop for all the good stuff in racing. Speaking of, Paul Ferguson's Jumpers to Follow is available now. You don't have to wait for the excellent Paul Ferguson Weatherby's Cheltenham Festival betting guide, which hopefully we'll be teaming up with Paul to promote later on in the season. But right now you can get your hands on the essential guide for the new jump season. All the information you need laid out for you in a brilliant digital book or an actual physical copy of a book. Paul Ferguson's Jumpers to Follow 2025-2026. Get £3 off your copy of the print, the digital, or the print and digital bundle. That's the one you want to get. If you buy that, you can have the digital copy for yourself and give the book as a thoughtful gift to somebody you really like. And they'll think, oh my goodness, you've bought this for me. When you kind of did. You kind of did. And you'll get yourself £3 off as well. FFJTF2526 at the checkout. You'll get £3 off or €3 off. £3 for weatherbyshop.co.uk, €3 off at weatherbyshop.ie. FFJTF2526. If you're struggling to remember it, just go Final Furlong, Jumpers to Follow, 2526. Capital letters, all one word. FFJTF2526. Buy it now. It is essential reading. We have another podcast to do as well, Paul. Who are we tackling next?
I don't know. Have we discussed that? What have we done so far? The Novice Chase. Did we do Novice Chases last time?
No, last time was more of a...
Just an overview. Maybe we can do Novice Chase.
Maybe we'll ask you to decide in the comment section. Do you want us to do Novice Chasers or do you want us to do the major championship races and the major contenders for those? Which would you like Paul's expert opinion on? Novice Chases or championship races for the new season? Let us know in the YouTube comment section and we will announce that podcast in the coming weeks. It's not too far away, actually. We're recording that pretty soon. Paul, pleasure as always. Where are you racing next?
I'm at Chepstow on Saturday. I'm only going down for the day. We're sponsoring a 4-year-old race, so we're down there. Possibly Weatherby and Carlisle next week. Week after. Yeah. Then,
he's off to Chepstow on the day where the champion juvenile of Europe will be crowned, when Zavateri crushes his enemies in the Dewhurst. We're still in Flatmore. Watch out for Paul Ferguson at a racecourse near you. Get your copy of Paul Ferguson's excellent Jumpers to Follow and smash a like on this video if you haven't already. Smash that like button. It's much appreciated. Show your appreciation for Paul Ferguson and, of course, hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode of the Final Furlong podcast. That Tom Malone special will be coming your way very, very soon. He's in great form. He's got a lot of forces to talk about and he had a lot to talk about at the start of that episode too. So I really hope you enjoy that. From Paul Ferguson and me, Emmet Kennedy, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to the Final Furlong podcast. We really appreciate your support of the show, and we'll talk to you again very, very soon. Look after yourself and each other. God bless.
Thanks for spending some time with us on the Final Furlong podcast. We're independent media, so if you like what we do, hit like, share, and subscribe. It's free, it's quick, and it genuinely helps. And if you enjoyed this episode, there's plenty more where that came from. Don't miss out. Subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all major platforms, and join us on the gravy train. The Final Furlong podcast, independent, unfiltered, and powered by you.